Vikings, let's win the game.
One Vikings rookie is already being called a meathead by the coaching staff. And believe it or not, that's one of the biggest compliments a football player can receive. At the same time, a franchise legend still hasn't closed the door on a possible return. A former first-round pick is suddenly carrying the weight of an entire position group on his shoulders. And now, a fifth-round rookie corner is starting to make enough noise that coaches can't ignore him. We're only in the offseason, but some very important storylines are beginning to take shape inside TCO Performance Center. The question is how many of them will still matter once training camp battles start getting real. For years, one criticism followed Kevin O'Connell's Vikings no matter how explosive the offense looked. They could score points. They could throw the football all over the field. They could create highlight reel moments. But when games became ugly, physical and demanding in the trenches, there were times when Minnesota simply didn't look built to win that kind of fight. That's why a seemingly small comment from offensive coordinator Wes Phillips caught my attention. During minicamp, while discussing one of the newest additions to the roster, Phillips used two words that Vikings fans should absolutely love hearing. First, he called him a dirtbag. Then he called him a meathead. In football language, those are compliments. Big compliments. The player receiving that praise was rookie fullback Max Bredeson. Most fans remember him as J.J. McCarthy's former teammate at Michigan, especially after McCarthy jumped onto the Zoom call after Minnesota drafted him in the 5th round. But now we're hearing something even more important. Coaches are seeing exactly the type of player they hoped they were getting. Phillips described Bredeson as someone who loves football, someone who's physical, intelligent, and completely invested in the game. That's the kind of player coaches trust. That's the kind of player who earns snaps. And when you look at the roster, you can see a pattern forming. Josh Oliver, Jordan Mason, Will Freeze, Jauan Jennings. These aren't finesse additions. These are players who enjoy contact, players who embrace the ugly parts of football. Minnesota isn't abandoning its identity. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and the passing game will still drive this offense. But there is a growing sense that this team wants to become harder to play against when games tighten up in November and December. Bredeson may only be a 5th-round fullback, but sometimes culture shifts start with players exactly like that. If he continues impressing coaches when the pads come on, don't be surprised if we see more two-back formations, more physical football, and more opportunities for Jordan Mason to punish defenses. That could have a ripple effect on the entire offensive identity. The funny thing is that nobody expected a rookie fullback to become one of the more intriguing stories of the summer. Yet here we are, watching closely to see whether the meathead might quietly help reshape part of this offense. There are certain players who become larger than the position they play, larger than the statistics, larger than the roster itself. For Minnesota, Harrison Smith has become one of those figures, and right now, nobody truly knows what comes next. The veteran safety still hasn't committed to playing in 2026, and every week that uncertainty hangs over the organization a little longer. Yet former Vikings linebacker Ben Leber believes the story may not be over. In fact, he sees a scenario where Smith returns later in the season, potentially using the bye week as a launching point before working himself back into a full-time role. When Leber said he doesn't believe Harrison is done, I think a lot of Vikings fans felt the same way. Last season, Smith was still productive. He was still making plays. He was still organizing one of the NFL's most complicated defensive systems. That's the part many people overlook. Harrison Smith isn't just another safety. He's practically an extension of Brian Flores on the field. He diagnoses, he adjusts, he communicates, he disguises intentions. He puts teammates in position to succeed before the ball is even snapped. Flores himself recently acknowledged how difficult it would be to replace someone like that. And that's what raises the stakes here. Because while Smith has been absent from off-season activities, younger players have been forced into larger responsibilities. Theo Jackson, Jay Ward, other defensive backs are getting opportunities to handle duties that Harrison has managed for years. Leber actually sees value in that process. He wants those players studying Smith's film, studying how he orchestrates the defense, studying the little details that don't show up on stat sheets. That's easier said than done. Very few safeties in NFL history have played the game the way Harrison Smith has. But the Vikings don't have a choice. They must prepare for both possibilities. They have to be ready if he returns, and they have to be ready if he doesn't, because if someone can't handle those responsibilities, the impact will be felt across the entire defense. That's what makes this situation so emotional for Vikings fans. We've watched one of the greatest defenders in franchise history for over a decade. Nobody wants to imagine the defense without him. Yet at the same time, a transition is coming eventually. The only question is whether that transition starts now, or whether the hitman has one more chapter left to write. Sometimes an entire season can hinge on one player taking the next step. Not a superstar, not a proven veteran, a young player moving from potential to production. That's exactly where Dallas Turner finds himself right now. When Minnesota traded Jonathan Greenard to Philadelphia, it sent a clear message throughout the league. The Vikings believe Turner is ready. They have to believe it. ESPN's Mina recently pointed directly at the former first-round pick as Minnesota's X factor entering 2026, and honestly, it's hard to disagree. Think about the pressure attached to that label. Greenard is gone. Expectations are rising. Kyler Murray is now part of an offense expected to compete immediately. This isn't a developmental year anymore. Minnesota needs pass rush. They need disruption. They need impact plays. Turner showed flashes of all of that last season. Depending on which statistics you use, he finished with either 8 or 9 sacks despite limited opportunities. The athletic ability jumps off the screen. His first step is explosive. His closing speed is elite. He can erase space in a hurry. Those traits can't be taught. But Kimes also pointed out the challenge ahead. Raw athleticism only gets you so far in the NFL. The technical side of pass rushing still needs growth. Counter moves, hand usage, consistency, winning against quality offensive tackles every single week. That's the difference between a promising player and a star. And that's the difference between this trade looking brilliant or becoming a question fans revisit all season long. The encouraging part is that Brian Flores clearly sees something special. Flores isn't the type of coach who casually signs off on losing a productive edge rusher unless he believes the replacement is ready to emerge. That's why training camp will be enormous for Turner. Every rep matters. Every preseason snap matters. Every sign of development matters. And let's be honest, Minnesota could still benefit from adding another veteran pass rusher for depth. Someone like Joey Bosa would certainly make sense if the opportunity exists. Depth becomes a lot more important when the expectations are this high. But regardless of what happens there, this defense is counting on Dallas Turner. The future of the pass rush may rest on his shoulders, and over the next few months, we'll learn whether the Vikings were right to place that bet. One of my favorite parts of every offseason is discovering the player nobody saw coming, the name that barely gets mentioned on draft weekend and then suddenly starts generating buzz inside the building. Right now, that player might be a young cornerback who refuses to act like a rookie. Reports coming out of minicamp suggest there's a 5th-round pick making a strong early impression. Before most fans even knew much about him, coaches and observers were already noticing the confidence. That player is Charles Demmings, and confidence might be an understatement. According to reports from minicamp, Demmings has been anything but timid. He's lining up aggressively against receivers. He's challenging routes. He's trusting his speed and physicality. Most importantly, he doesn't appear overwhelmed by the jump from Stephen F. Austin to the NFL. That's significant because the gap between small school football and professional football is enormous. Plenty of talented players need time to adjust. Demmings seems eager to attack the challenge head-on. Vikings territory's Kay Judry used words like explosive and high-octane when describing what he saw. Those aren't terms people casually throw around. They're the kinds of descriptions that grab attention during June practices. And suddenly, conversations about roster spots become a lot more interesting. Byron Murphy Jr. and Isaiah Rodgers are expected to handle major responsibilities. James Pierre adds veteran depth, but behind those names, opportunities exist. Real opportunities. Several analysts already believe Demmings is in strong position to earn a roster spot. Some even view him as the favorite for the CB4 role. That's remarkable considering where he was selected, and if he secures that role, it would represent an important early win for Minnesota's 2026 draft class. What I love most about this story isn't the hype, it's the mindset. Great NFL careers often begin with a player believing he belongs before everyone else does. Demmings appears to have that mentality. Of course, minicamp praise doesn't guarantee anything. Training camp is coming. Preseason games are coming. Veteran receivers will test him. NFL quarterbacks will test him. The spotlight will get brighter. That's when these early impressions start getting challenged. But every summer, one young player starts forcing people to pay attention. And as we sit here in June, Charles Demmings might be doing exactly that. When you step back and look at all 4 of these stories together, a bigger picture starts to emerge. A physical rookie fullback earning respect, a franchise legend whose future still matters, a young pass rusher being trusted with enormous responsibility, a 5th-round corner already fighting for a role. That's how teams evolve. That's how contenders are built. Not through one headline, but through dozens of small developments happening at the same time. Some become major stories. Others quietly shape the season before anyone realizes it. So now I want to hear from you. Which story has you most excited heading into training camp? Max Bredeson's toughness, Harrison Smith's future, Dallas Turner's breakout opportunity, or Charles Demmings turning heads already? Let me know below. As always, thank you for being part of this incredible Vikings community, and no matter how long the wait feels, football is getting closer. The Purple and Gold are preparing for some important answers over the next few months, and that's what makes this time of year so fascinating. Stay tuned. Skol Vikings, let's go.